Is there anybody that's got a problem with doing that?
Here's my only issue, and this is not something that I'm willing to die on the sword for, but I think that if we leave the quorum at 3, no matter what happens, you're always going to require 3 votes to pass something, period.
Sure.
And to me, anytime you lessen that, you kind of take away, I mean.
That's always been my concern as well.
Yeah.
That way, in the instance where there's only 3 people, the minority may rule.
Right.
And I just don't think that's the best solution, because with the quorum of 4, then yes, it could at a time the mayor would have to cast a vote in that instance. That's always been my concern also when it comes to special meetings. You know, if 3 people get together and say, I want a special meeting to push forward a cause, and 2 people aren't able to attend, but all 3 of them are, then the meeting comes to through it, and they go through and they can push through what it is, because they wouldn't need a majority. That's always been my concern, why I think 4 is a better fit.
And I understand the concerns of the minority of the council making a decision in lieu of that. And it's a concern of mine too, but I think the biggest concern is that we can't get business done if, let's say, one person who is traveling, and we know this individual is traveling because they put out their notification well in advance they were traveling, and Lord knows we all travel. But then we also have a situation where somebody has a sudden illness or some sort of family emergency and they can't make it. Now you have to stop business. Now maybe that's fine. Maybe the city is okay with that. But if it's a situation where you've got budget, for example, it has to be considered. That's the first week of August. We're trying to get the budget pushed out, and we can't get that done because of the fact that we have 2 people that are missing. What happens? I mean, I'm just throwing that out there, hypothetical, and I think it's a valid concern.
It's a very valid concern. It's a big what if. I mean, Christy and Chris are both, and Larry at the same time, are almost into year 4. They've not missed quorum for any meeting that I can remember that canceled on the end of the day. Was there one where on the day of the meeting we had to cancel due to quorum not being met?
Yes.
That was May last year.
May of last year, there was 1 meeting, so 1 out of 4 years. Yes, you're fixing maybe a perceived issue, but is it an issue when it happens so rarely? And in the instance of a budget or something that's necessary meeting, we can't meet quorum tonight. There could always be a special meeting called the next time that everyone's available. You don't have to wait 2 weeks, though it's typically our model. If it's urgent business, we could meet with public notice by Wednesday night and have that meeting in place, understanding that everyone could be there. So I don't find it to be as critical a nature of an issue as some people might, because it's happened so rarely and there's remedies in place to be able to fix it pretty quickly if necessary.
I tend to agree with Heath. I think 4 is a good number because of the fact about the 3 can call a special meeting, 3 can call a special meeting, have the meeting, those 3 push something through, and I don't know, I like the 4.
But the 4 gives the mayor an advantage that he doesn't probably enjoy with the 3. And as long as no one juggles the schedule and says, oh, I hear that 2 people are going to be missing, so let's put that issue that the mayor doesn't agree with on the back burner. You know, I think that's a concern. So I'm not really. I could go both ways on that. I don't know that I'm.
And I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I also think that the mayor's elected knowing that he will have a tie. I mean, people elect him because of that. I mean, so I don't know. Like I said, I just think moving backwards, in my opinion, is not necessarily the right.
But understanding backwards is in compliance with the state statute. I mean, the vast majority of cities in this state run under the state statutory requirement of the majority.
It's part of the ordinance where we can't decide which time you want to be in line with the state and write a charter ordinance to write several things where you're not going to be.
I mean, and I understand that.
It is.
We could consider ourselves as, you know,
We're rebels.
more enlightened in that regard than the state. But I mean, I just point that out. The state norm, the state standard is a majority. LKM, you know, has come down, you know, has stated that's a perfectly reasonable and rational form of a quorum. So I just throw that out there as well.
I mean, to have 2 people miss on the same night, I don't think that's never happened, except for when we had a vacancy.
Well, if we have a vacancy, we might just have that happen. but that's
Yeah.
only happened once in a couple of years, so.
Ones that we're all aware of. None of us have been here for too terribly long.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would, my thinking is, you know, state statute was established for a reason, and honestly, it's not just, something where it's a majority of the cities in the state do it, but, if you check National League of Cities, quorum is usually established at majority rule. And, you know, if council members are concerned enough about, their duties as a council member to make sure that they show up on council, meeting evenings and vote, are here to vote, then we're probably not going to have a whole lot of problem getting, four either, but we don't have to bring the city to a grinding halt either. And some of it, I think, it just involves a little bit of trust amongst one another, and, you know, I don't know if I can speak for past councils or future councils, but I'd like to think that we've got some trust among one another on this one.
I think I'd swing over to the three-person quorum, just because I feel like the four-person quorum was put there for a reason, and that was to give the mayor a lot more control. And so, I think, the risk of, I mean, I think that we have to undo what the intent was the last time it was changed. And don't forget, that wasn't a solitary, charter ordinance change. I mean, I don't know if you've all looked back at that, but, the first charter ordinance was changed in 1962. There were 17 total over about 36 years, and then on one night in 2002, October 7th, all of a sudden 4 had to be signed. And that, to me, seems a little suspicious. So I guess I would revert back to the three-person quorum.
I don't have the same concerns about it that Larry does, but I don't have a problem with switching it from 3 to 4. I mean, from 4 to 3. I think it's more ideal. I think it keeps the city running. I think that, you know, the advice we got from Kansas League of Municipalities, I kind of wish we had Don Moeller, who unfortunately is retired, here to say what he said to us that day in the Municipal Government Institute that I attended. But
What did he say?
well, no, he said you want it to be 3.
And what was his rationale?
I can't.
No.
That stuff comes at you pretty fast and furious when you go to the Governing Body Institute, so.
Just something else to add to your options is the quorum can change depending upon the circumstances. For example, you could write into the charter ordinance that in the event of a vacancy, the quorum would be 3 rather than 4, and leave it at 4 at other times. So, I mean, we can get creative with the draft.
I absolutely support something like that.
I would too. Me too.
That might actually be a better solution, because that way we can continue city business, understanding that not, you know, in the event of a unforeseen circumstance, we don't have the city stopping.
I think it's a fine suggestion. Anyone else? Against?
I could live with that.
All right, we're not dying on hills this evening.
Okay, good.
Very good. Next, city of the first class. And there again, I mean, Steve and Heath have both expressed their opinions about that. I mean, is there anybody else that wants to weigh in? My entire thinking behind it is that when you wait until the last minute, you tend to get in a rush. And when you get into a rush, mistakes are made. So why wait until the last minute?
I tend to think we should wait and start the process once we get to the 25,000. Not necessarily that we're gonna be hurrying around. I mean, I don't think it says you have to be complete